Hey everybody! Today I'm going to be doing a little introduction video about my new snake Jupiter, what he's like, and what his care requirements are. So this is Jupiter. He is my BCI boa constrictor. And you might be wondering what BCI stands for, and BCI stands for boa constrictor imperator, but there's also boa constrictor constrictors, and boa constrictor constrictors would be like your true red tail boas, and boa constrictor imperators would be like these guys here, which aren't technically the true red tails, they're just normal boa constrictors. So these guys get to about 7 to 8 feet if it's a male, and if it's a female, usually around 8.5, maybe 9 to 10 feet if it's a really big female, but most of them just stay around 8 or 9 feet. So this guy is a male, so he will most likely get around 7 feet long. There are cases of them being, 6.5 feet, 8 feet, but it's pretty rare for them to get to the extremes. He's a very small boa right now, as you can see. He was born May 5th of 2023, so he is going to be 4 months old in September. A lot of times people who don't own boas think of them as aggressive or mean snakes, but as you can see, he's just chilling on my arm. He's a nice snake. I mean, he doesn't really care. My other snake, June, who's a black grass snake, who you've probably seen in videos a while ago, because I haven't posted in a while, she is pretty cage defensive. So she's okay once I get her out, and she knows that I'm not going to hurt her, but she doesn't like me reaching in to pick her up out of her cage. But Jupiter here is pretty much fine with it. Even as a young baby, he doesn't need much socialization to not be too bitey. Even though these guys do get big, their care requirements are not that difficult compared to some of your other large snakes. They only eat once a week as babies, which is what I'm feeding him right now. I'm feeding him hoppers or fuzzies, depending on what I have available. And he is going to soon be, oh, sorry, buddy. Adult boas normally eat every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, depending on the size of the meal, but every 4 weeks would be for a really big meal like a guinea pig, although in most cases you're just going to feed a jumbo-sized rat. So they're not too difficult. A lot of people don't like feeding big rats to snakes, so I get why that would be a downside to having them, but I mean, just look how cool they are and how pretty. Another downside would be the size of enclosure they require. Depending on the size, you would want at least a 6 foot by 2 foot enclosure for an adult male, but it would be even better to have a 8 foot by 2 foot, and they are semi-arboreal snakes, so it's best if they have some height, but it's not 100% necessary. So at least a 2 foot height for sure, but even better would be 3 or 4 feet. Boas themselves are relatively inexpensive. I found him for about $150, although even though they're relatively inexpensive, their housing is not. It can be very expensive to house these guys because they need 6 foot or 8 foot enclosures depending on the size of the snake, and they will eventually need to be upgraded to that in about 3 years if you have them. And I have him in a 20 gallon right now, but he's going to be upgraded to my 4x2x2 that I have right now for a few years until he gets his final upgrade to his 6 foot or 8 foot enclosure. So that is the most expensive part. A lot of people end up making their enclosures because it's even more expensive to buy them off of the internet. It's just a huge enclosure that takes up a lot of space. So that's the main downside to these guys because they're so awesome otherwise. Really easy to keep. It's just that their housing is expensive, can take up a lot of space, and not everybody has access to it. Boas aren't going to get as big as, say, your Burmese pythons or your reticulated pythons, but you should still be relatively careful when handling them because sometimes they don't know their own strength and they just grip onto your arm a little too hard. It's not going to be anything you can't resolve, then it's not going to be any danger to you. But if you have a big 10-foot female, you definitely want somebody else in the room when you're holding them just to make sure that if they accidentally grab on a little too hard and they don't know their own strength, that there's somebody else in there to help you if you need to get them off. Yeah, that's about it for boas. So if you'd like me to do a full care guide with, heat, humidity, what they need in their enclosure, substrate, all that good stuff, then feel free to leave a comment and I'll definitely do that video in the near future. I am so excited to watch this guy grow up. I can't wait for him to get big. All right, thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you next time.